God, I hate deadlines. There's nothing more saddening to me, at least in a movie watching sense, than when you find a concept that you fully believe is a great idea. Something that makes you go, oh my god, how has no one ever done that before? And sometimes it has been done, but you don't know that. What, have you watched every movie ever made? Okay, Grandpa, let's get you to bed. You need your rest to stay awake to the next Avatar movie when it comes out. But there's been many cases in the past few years of great ideas that just don't work out. I mean, that's a creative process sometimes, and you know how many people were hyped out of their mind to see a trilogy about the life of Anakin Skywalker? Sweet summer children. But there's been some recent disappointments this year that have hit me really hard because of my own excitement for the movies. And yeah, that might be my own fault, but let me have this, okay? Just this year, I've been greatly disappointed by a bunch of movies. Some I thought would be fun bad and just ended up being miserable. Some felt like they were a little too off the walls, and some just didn't come together in the end. One of these I'll be talking about very soon, but I do still have 4 videos in the back burner. And the other is How to Make a Killing. I watched this on Monday before this comes out, and man, I am disappointed. I've been seeing ads for this movie for months, and I kinda like the trailer. I thought it seemed fun. You've got Glenn Powell in the leading role again, and yeah, while last time that happened I was also disappointed, I don't blame the guy. It wasn't his fault, and he was giving a solid performance. I mean, he's my ideal Johnny Cage, so I'd rather have him in MK2, but Karl Urban works for what they're going for, I guess. The problem is, Karl Urban is actually cool, though. That's for another time, however. How to Make a Killing follows Beckett Redfellow, played by Glenn Powell. Youngest to the Redfellow estate inheritance, even despite the fact his mother Mary was cast out of the family at 18 years old for refusing to get rid of her baby. The two of them lived together in New York as Beckett grew up until she passed away. Beckett's only friend during this time was Julia, a kind of spoiled rich girl he had a crush on, but who can be very blunt and kinda just weird actually. Fast forward to today, and Beckett is working at a respectable suit store, until one day, in walks none other than Julia, now played by Margaret Qualley, in a very different performance to what she's usually doing. Although maybe I've just seen her in protagonist roles most of the time. The two catch up, until attention is finally drawn to the thing Beckett had told her about way back when they were kids. That he's an heir to the Redfellow estate. His will to impress the girl he's always wanted to be with since he was a kid, his mother's last words telling him to never stop until he has a life deserving of him, and his resentment for the lack of respect and care his family has given to both him and his mother, Beckett swears that he's going to kill all 7 of his currently living Redfellows and claim what is his. To make a killing, if you will. Now this is a fun concept, right? I thought so at least. I like movies that are unapologetic about the character murdering people. I get really pissed off when I'm watching a fictional story about a serial killer, contract killer, or just someone that happens to kill people, and the entire thing bends over backwards to try and lecture the audience on why they're wrong and we shouldn't do this. It really annoys me with Death Note, especially since Light's character has much more to be lectured about, and annoys me with Dexter. This is not really the case in this movie. Beckett's moral crisis is only really present during the first murder, and it's played off as a joke, and that's good shit. Black comedy really works in these kinds of movies, and I think it's handled pretty well. The first act is genuinely so entertaining. We see the different flavors of assholes in the family, and a lot of commentary on nepotism and how the only real ways to get rich are through familial inheritance or by getting your hands dirty. I mean, Beckett literally murders people, and the most unlikable thing he does is get a job at Wall Street. But Glenn Powell gives a pretty solid performance. It balances the levity and likability of Beckett with the whole debacle. I do think the movie could be a little funnier. There's only one joke that made me react, and it's less so what is said and more so how well it's timed and how good Glenn Powell's delivery is in contrast to all of the other characters surrounding him. Most of the one-liners, and especially the artist guy Noah, just grated on me. I get that he's meant to be an unfunny loser, but they still made me sit through his jokes. It was giving TJ Miller in Deadpool 1 and 2, even if it isn't that bad. Honestly though, I just like the first act a lot. All the different situations we see Beckett put himself in and try to get out of are really fun. I'm gonna call this movie fun a lot, aren't I? I really like the third one especially, this Bible-bashing pasta celebrity who commits tax evasion regularly and has a katana in his office from Kyoto. The second act is definitely weaker. They gloss over the main point of the movie, which is the murders, and rush through them. But I do like what they set up with the penultimate target and the ultimate payoff with him. I did find myself asking several times, like, Beckett, do you need to kill all the old people? Like, one of these guys is at least 70, maybe even 80, but they're still on his hit list. That's elder abuse, man. That's not cool. I'm also not sure how I feel about the final target, or the whole encounter with them, rather. It just kind of felt out of place. I wasn't explained very well, and especially with one line they say to Beckett, it doesn't feel like this is something they were planning on doing. It kind of felt like a cheap way to inject some action into the movie. even if it is the only example of setup and payoff from anything in the first act. The final act, however, by far the weakest part of the film. Because of how it opens, I was left wondering exactly how we'd get to that. I think there's actually a pretty good twist at the end of the second act, but I'm also not sure that the narrative device fully works. Mild spoilers, but at the very beginning of the movie, we see Beckett in prison with 4 hours until his execution as he talks to a priest and tells him the whole story. Since this counts as a confessional, the priest can't disclose any information to anyone, or he might get kicked out of the Thieves Guild or whatever. I mean the Priests Guild. Sorry. And I feel like this is kinda just there to have Beckett exposit his backstory, which is fine, but it removes some of the subtext of his emotions later in the movie, when present-day Beckett just states them to the audience under the guise of it being to the priest. I have mixed feelings, and similarly, I have very mixed feelings on Margaret Qualley's character Julia, who I've neglected to mention until now. They make it obvious that Julia likes toying with Beckett, and she's mad she can't do it as easily now that they're adults, but she still tries to leech off of his finance job and get a loan somehow. Things progress more and more, but the more and more Beckett interacts with her, the more I just wish she wasn't in the movie, and that's a first for me. I've never gone on record before saying a movie needed less Margaret Qualley. Her character though, not her performance. That's fine. But the third act, it gets so muddied with her inclusion into the story and the very different conflict that arises. I'd rather things just stay focused and we see a plot about Beckett getting revenge on his family that scorned him and his mother. And we can still have the commentary the movie tries to go for of hatred to billionaires and sort of an eat the rich mindset, even if I think it doesn't fully commit to that because they kind of balance it with a money can't buy happiness message, which works in some cases since Ruth, who is a very prominent character played by Jessica Henwick, introduced in the first act, is kind of the embodiment of this. She worked in fashion and made great money, but hated it, so wants to become a teacher. But since they're trying to push the came-from-nothing backstory motivation for Beckett, which is much more fleshed out here than in Crime 101, for example, it kind of makes sense that he'd want money. The only way the money can't buy happiness part even works is because at one point Beckett gets a cushy job with a nice life and all he had to do was murder someone. It doesn't feel like the culmination of the events of the movie relate to any of these messages, and it's hard for me to explain that without spoilers, but I think a better way for it to have been portrayed is to essentially just have Beckett kill them all and then inherit the estate and we just see how lonely he is during it. Because it's his life obsession and after that he doesn't know what to do. It wouldn't necessarily be actually, you would hate being rich, but more, yeah, making good money is fine, but would you really want to achieve everything in life? That's a question about worth that will actually make people think instead of trying to look down at people that just want enough money to be happy and not have to worry about their lives constantly. The ending also just really does not work for me. It felt like they just didn't know how to finish it. It wasn't conclusive, it didn't feel like it was hinting at something happening in the future like some movies often end with. It kind of just ended. I expected more, which is annoying because I really felt the length of this movie. The first act is well paced, but the rest? Not so much. This isn't even 2 hours long, and yet it felt so egregious. Most of all though, there just wasn't anything interesting on the technical side of things. I was really hoping for some cool stylization to go with the fast pace this movie should have. I mean, the closest thing to the plot of this movie, at least from my limited, stupid brain, is Scott Pilgrim, where Scott has to fight the 7 evil exes of Ramona Flowers, whom he has a crush on, and defeat them one by one. Now, think about how those characters are introduced. Anything similar would be insane. Man, I talk about Edgar Wright a lot on this channel. But I was thinking this through all the segments with the family tree, since I would have liked to see little moments of character for each of the targets. And considering that the family tree shows their birth year with a blank death year, I just wanted to cut back to the death year being filled in. I don't know if that's a huge nitpick, but I felt like a missed opportunity. This is from a director who has only ever directed one other feature film before though, and was originally only meant to be a screenwriter, but like, come on man, you could have had something here. Overall, I'm just disappointed by How to Make a Killing. A great cast with a killer plot could have made for something super fun and engaging, but I felt like the focus was put in all the wrong places and the pacing ended up being horrible. And I just really dislike Julia's writing. It feels like she should not even be here. With its sluggish pacing, misuse of the potential the story had, basic and serviceable camera work and technical aspects, solid performances that carry a lot of the weight and very fun first act, I'm giving How to Make a Killing a 4.5 out of 10. It's really sad that I've been disappointed by so many movies this year, and I hope it's not a trend. Especially with the big ones coming out soon, like Project Hail Mary, Disclosure Day, Supergirl, The Odyssey, Spider-Man, Clayface, but only time will tell. And if you don't want Glen Powell to kill your entire family, I'd suggest you subscribe. The YouTube algorithm isn't kind to smaller content creators like me, and any engagement can really help to push our videos out to a wider audience. If you like this one, then please like it, and if not, that's okay. I still hope to see you in the next one. Until then, take care, and enjoy the start of spring. I'm now going to go back to playing Resident Evil 9 and hibernating. See you.